computer. Paul, it's yours.
Hey, good evening, guys. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Brave New Spirits. Thank you to Asaf for arranging this. Great to see you. I don't know how many of you were at the tasting when I was in Israel a few weeks ago, but if anybody wasn't, hopefully you find something tonight that will be as fun as the tasting was a few weeks ago, huh? As Asif probably said, I'm in Glasgow right now. I work for Brave New Spirits. We are a small batch producer, mainly of single cask Scotch whiskey, and we've got 9 different ones for you to try tonight that come from a range called Cask Noir. So I've seen the picture. You've got those amazing little tasting packs. So easiest thing. If anybody has any questions, please, this is not a lecture. So let me know what you think when you taste the whiskies. Let me know what you think when you smell the whiskies. If you have any questions, you can use the chat bar as well, and I will try and answer them as best I can. But the whole idea is we get to drink some nice whiskey tonight and have a lot of fun. So, and hopefully you find something that you like. We've got some new whiskies which will be in Israel pretty soon as well. And if you like what you see tonight, then check in with Whiskey Embassy and see what they have coming. But shall we start with the first dram? I've seen the list of 9, and I've put them in a different order. So the first one to try tonight is actually the first one anyway. It's number 1. So bottle number 1. We're going to do this. You're going to have to guess which ones I do each, but I'll tell you the number once you go. And this is bottle number 1. One of my favorite bourbon cask whiskies. And I'll tell you a little bit about. I'll tell you what it is, and then once you've had a chance to know, let me know what you think of it. Let me know the questions. But this is from Glenmurray Distillery in Speyside. Most of the whiskies tonight are from Speyside, actually. It's a great region, well worth a visit if anybody's never been. But this is from Glenmurray Distillery. It's 14 years old. It's a bourbon cask. It's very, very simple. It's a Speyside single malt in a bourbon cask. Probably the kind of thing that every single distillery can make, but Glenmurray do it very, very well. And what you have here, if anybody's ever seen Glenmurray normally, the distillery makes a lot of whiskies that they sell mainly in supermarkets. So they don't usually sell their whiskey at single cask or at cask strength. They should. Have a taste of this, have a nose. This is classic. It's a great whiskey to start a tasting. It's light, grassy, honey, vanilla. This herbal, is 56. This is 56%, but it doesn't taste like it's 56% because good whiskey doesn't really matter about ABV if the flavors are there. But bear in mind they are all pretty strong whiskies tonight. So if you've got your water and a little water dropper, don't be scared to add a few drops, because when you have whiskey at this kind of strength, 1 or 2 drops of water can make a lot of difference to the way the texture works or the way the aromas start to move. But yeah, I'm jealous. I don't have a bottle of this one here with me. I've got some of the ones tonight, so I'll join you in the dram. But yeah, let me know. Hopefully this is a good one to start, because after this we start going into some of the heavier whiskies, some of the ones using wine casks, and then we get to the smoky ones to finish. So, but please have a little nose, and then see if what you smell matches what you taste when you have a sip. So, and you can take yourself off mute if you want to chat away. So.
תמלא בתוך חדר כושר. Very floral, very herbal, very the nose is very fruity.
I'm going by memory here. I've got a teenage, but I'm going by memory. We've released a couple of Glenmurray whiskies. There's, you'll see tonight some of our whiskies use wine casks. There might be cask finishes. They might be aged for a long time in the wine cask. But not every whiskey needs to be. We always taste the casks. We always taste our spirits regularly because we want, if we think it needs a wine cask, then we can use a wine cask. Sometimes you taste a whiskey that's just so natural that you don't think you need to change anything. And this is one of those ones. This is, we've got Glenmurray whiskies in the warehouse that we've moved to wine casks. But when the bourbon cask one is this good, why would you not bottle it? So
I think Glenmurray is a distillery that is underestimated.
absolutely right. It's owned by a French company, and they have, so they have massive customers. And I can go into any store in the UK, any big retail chain, and get the 46% Glenmurray. You normally only see the cask strength ones or the single cask if you buy from independent bottlers. Glenmurray are quite happy for the independent bottlers to do this. And if you ever get a chance to visit the distillery, it's a stunning place. But they have a couple of barrels in the visitor center of the distillery, and they change them regularly, so you can always get a single cask at the distillery. And they're spectacular. But it's the distillery is so famous as a large distillery that a lot of people sometimes overlook these bigger distilleries but they can produce some amazing small amounts of whiskey if you're looking for something special, and it always means the price is always good as well. So
see them a lot lately. Single casks of them released in every retailer. Master of Malt, Whiskey Exchange. You see them a lot lately with a lot of single casks. Very, very good. Very. They are present very, very lately. Not them. I haven't seen them. Let's say 3 years ago. I've seen them only on the last 2 years or something like this. Not more than that.
We've seen them 10 years ago, and when we visit Scotland, we visit the distillery. And unfortunately, it was in between. So they had one cask empty and the other cask on the way to be in 2 days after. And we continued the trip. But I can tell you that I think the first Glenmurray I bought was about 15 years ago. Something like that.
I'm just saying that lately they're a little bit more, you get to know them more. On the last 2 years, I haven't heard of them 5 or 6 or 10 years ago. That's why.
I mean, the parent company do a lot of great stuff. They own several different brands. They do a lot of whiskey blending work. But as more and more people become interested in single malt, Glenmurray is a big distillery, but it's not one of the super famous ones in this region. This is a region where you find Macallan and Glenlivet and Glenfarclas. So it's always kind of just under the radar, but it's well worth searching out. So
I actually think that Glenmurray is mostly pretty generic, but if you hit the right cask, and this is a wonderful cask, it's a wonderful example, it can be excellent. A lot of Glenmarys need more time. Actually, this is for 14 years old is really amazing. There was a Charlton bottling, a 27-year-old, which was fantastic and probably the best Glenmurray I've had. But this is wonderful, and I love whiskey and bourbon casks, not getting any external influence, but the good interaction between a good cask and the distillate.
Yeah. They make fantastic spirit up there. I love stopping in to see the guys. I know a lot of the Glenmurray people well. We see them at whiskey fairs and things. And the reason they do the whiskey fairs is because they can show people these smaller production whiskies, because most of their 90% of what they do is normally, as you said, the generic 43% in a supermarket. But that doesn't mean to say you should walk past that. it's probably one of the best 43% whiskies you can find in the supermarket.
I totally agree with you.
But as always, you know, it's not Macallan or Glenfarclas, so you get a fantastic price, and it doesn't have, you know, you don't have to go on a waiting list to find it. So
yeah, £36.
But hopefully that's it. Let me know if there's any more questions or thoughts, and if you want to go on, you know, the one I'd planned for us to do next would be bottle number 6 on your sample list, which is a Dal Ewan. I thought it would be cool to have the two bourbon cask ones side by side so you could compare them. Don't rush though. Take your time on this. Should never rush whiskey. Take a sip. Kick back. This is your night. So
now number 6, you said?
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
So the second whiskey tonight will be bottle number 6.
So number 6, you have the list with you guys, or you want me maybe to send it on the WhatsApp page again?
Yeah.
Everybody have the list? If
number
somebody
6.
doesn't have the list, just send me a message and I'll reply with the list.
It's still number 6.
Yeah, number
The
6.
Rise of the Badger Clan.
That's the one. For those of you, that's it. I can see the number 6. For those of you who want to know, this is what the label looks like. So I'll hold this up to the camera. And you'll notice all of our Cask Noir whiskies have sort of strange names. There's a reason for that. We didn't just make the names up. These names, bizarrely, have a little bit of a link to the distillery. Now, in some cases, it's a very obvious link. In some cases, it's quite cryptic, but it's a kind of game. Some of the whiskies we produce, we're not allowed to tell you which distillery it is. So if you see the label and you look at the name, you might be able to guess from the clues on the label.
The badger's on the flora and fauna, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got it in one. We can tell you this is Dal Ewan, but normally if you find the distillery bottle, there's not a lot of distillery bottles from Dal Ewan. It's usually flora and fauna. It's usually 16 years old, sherry cask. This is the opposite. This is 11 years old bourbon cask, but the flora and fauna bottles always have a badger on the label. And we decided, so when we were looking for the name, we discovered the word clan is obviously a well-known word in Scotland, but it's also the term for a group of badgers. So we thought, well, it mentions badgers, it mentions Scotland. So this is the Badger clan. And a lot of people know immediately when they see a badger that we might be referencing Dal Ewan. There's the list going up in the chat bar if anybody's got their chat side of the thing open. And again, this is like the Glenmorangie. This is as simple and as natural as whiskey can get. This is 11 years old. It's from a Speyside distillery. It's bottled at 50.9%, and it's only a bourbon barrel. So this is probably, when it was distilled, it goes straight in the bourbon barrel, and we check it. We think it's good. We didn't think we needed to put a wine cask in there. We didn't think we needed to move it to a sherry cask or anything like that. We thought it was good enough. But it's cool to have the two bourbon cask whiskies side by side at the start, because I'd love to know what you guys think. And you know, these are from the same region. They're both from big distilleries, but you can see the difference. You can taste the difference here. So
sort of heavier, Dal Ewan.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
like the
Dal
first
Ewan,
one.
Much more oily. Rich.
yeah.
And quite salty as well.
Well, this is it, and it goes to show the lines in whiskey are blurring. You know, you've got Speyside whiskies, you've got Highland whiskies, you've got Island whiskies, but you can get smoky whiskies from the Highlands. You don't have to go to Islay for a smoky whiskey. You don't have to go to Speyside to get a fruity whiskey. So most of the warehouses for these barrels are now in between Glasgow and Edinburgh. So atmosphere might be very similar from wherever the casks are. So,
but this one I get apricot on the finish, which is
this is a fruity one. So
rare, but specifically I get sort of apricot, which is quite rare. I think in whiskey you get citrus, you get.
It's weird, Yuri. You know, it's weird
apples.
because this is the same thing that we heard in at Eagle's Place that Lahav said. He said the same thing as you said right now. You got the apricot, the same thing that you're saying right now. And he said it's weird, and he said that this tastes exactly like apricot.
But
so I asked Lav yesterday.
Yeah.
Every single malt distillery has a different kind of character. But what we like to do, I mean, most of our whiskies, you'll recognize these distilleries. They're big distilleries. But they're not distilleries where you see lots of different releases. You know, Daoyuan, you only really ever see flora and fauna, and it's a completely different whiskey to this. Different casks, different ages. Glenmurray, again, they normally bottle their own whiskies at 40 and 46%, so you very rarely see a cask strength. We don't want to copy what the distilleries are doing. We want to take what the distilleries are doing and show you what you can also do with the same basic one. But the Daoyuan is a great way of showing that not every Speyside distillery that uses bourbon casks produces the same whiskey.
There might be an effect to the type of bourbon, or where the bourbon cask came from.
There's so many different things that can influence the whiskey, but most of us are buying. We would buy what they call American standard barrels or bourbon. Some of us will have partnerships with bigger bourbon companies, but the bourbon industry are only allowed to use their casks once, and then they sell them. So it's good. There's always a steady stream of them. But there's experiments going on. Whether or not you would notice that, I don't know. We could have two identical Daoyuan 11-year-olds side by side in casks that were made at the same place, that were distilled and that were filled on the same day, and they've been in the same warehouse at the same temperature for 11 years, and the whiskies in both casks would be different. This is, whiskey's natural, and it doesn't do as it's told. So this is why it's a tough day in the office when we have to test the casks,
Really,
when you sit there and you get thousands of these glasses out, and you have to go through and you can decide. You can tell if you think a cask is aging really well and it should be a single cask, or perhaps you think this is one that would work better if we put a wine cask in here, or maybe we should mix it with another cask and we do a small batch, or we vat it, or we marry it. These are the questions you get. It's more. These are questions are more important for the big producers, because somebody, Daoyuan is a Diageo distillery, so somebody there will sit there and test all the casks that they're keeping and decide which ones go to be flora and fauna, which ones they might leave to be a little bit older, which ones they might use to put in a blended whiskey. It's a tough job. That's why everybody wants to do that job. So
break my heart, man. It breaks my heart.
It's terrible, huh?
Yeah.
Paul, do you fill your own casks?
We do a couple of. We're bigger than a lot of people think. Some independent bottlers are a very vague term, yeah. So you can be an independent bottler if you buy 1 or 2 barrels and you immediately bottle them yourself. What a lot of the larger independent bottlers, the other end of the scale, you've got guys like Gordon MacPhail who were buying casks 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And they have the casks in their warehouse. They check their casks. They might buy new make. What we do is a combination. We sometimes buy casks from other companies that are aged. More often, we try and buy casks that are younger than we will be bottling them at, because we want to keep them for a few years, and we want to have some kind of say in what happens to them. So we either buy, if we can, we'll buy brand new spirit, and we'll age it in our warehouse ourselves. We can do that with some distilleries that are happy to sell new spirit. With others, we might buy spirit while it's still young, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. We taste it, we think it's going to age well, so we sit and we monitor it, and we might wait till see it gets to sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But this is part of the. It's not a science, it's not an art. You just have to keep checking, and you try and pick the ones you think are behaving in a nice way. So
it's a craft.
It is. This is why the blenders in the whiskey industry, and we're not talking blended whiskey here, but you get blenders because even, you know, Diageo's Flora and Fauna d'Alun is a mixture of casks from that distillery. So there's a blender testing these, and some of these blenders are like rock stars. Some of them are, you know, they write books. They've been given medals by the king. You know, what they do is pretty special. I think anybody in the whiskey industry would love to get that job. So, and you get to drink at work. So, but that's d'Alun. So again, well-known distillery, but not well known as a single cask. Not well known in bourbon or American oak. It's more commonly known as a 16-year-old sherry cask, which, you know, Flora and Fauna, you don't find, if you go into a supermarket, you don't see d'Alun 10, 12, 15-year-old. They tend to just keep that for one or two of the releases themselves. So, David, I've just seen your comment. So I drink at work as well. Luckily, our warehouse actually, and I can't believe this, I joined this company about a year ago. The company's only 3 years old, but the two owners and a lot of the staff all worked for different whiskey companies before, so there's a lot of experience here. But when I joined them, we had our whiskey casks in lots of different warehouses, and we had an office in the city here in Glasgow. We got the chance to buy our own warehouse last year, so we did. And the new warehouse is 1.2 miles from my house. So on the days when we can test, I can happily walk home. So there's no problem, you know. You can leave my car there and just walk home. No, I don't have to take a taxi or anything. It's lovely. So
you can drink your way home.
You can do.
Whiskey to go. Piggy bag.
I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say this. Who in the room here has been to Glasgow?
Me.
There's a few. Good.
Also, yeah.
Well, for those of you that have been to Glasgow, you know there's quite a lot of drinking in the public here. So there's quite a lot of people drinking on the way home.
Yeah, people are drinking everywhere.
Glasgow's a beautiful city. It's got lots of green space, loads of parks, loads of places to relax. But normally, if you mention relaxing or socializing to anybody from Glasgow, that usually involves, you know, having a drink with your friends. So the parks are great, but they're also lovely places to go in summer with a few beers or a dram. So, but you're not allowed to get caught doing that. You're not supposed to drink outside here. So, but what do you think so far? There's 2 Speysides, 2 bourbon casks, 2 well-known distilleries, but hopefully 2 different approaches that you've not seen from the distillery wouldn't do it itself, you know?
180 degrees from 2 other sides. This takes you this way, this takes you other way. This one is fruity and fresh. This one is a little bit more heavier, with more vanilla taste.
I mean, yeah, if you can. This is why I love going to stores like Egal's Whiskey Embassy, because you get to taste these things. It's hard. When you look at a whiskey label in a shop, they have to tell you certain things. So they have to tell you the age, the cask. They might tell you which distillery it's from. But you could be looking at 2 different, you know, like number 1 and 2 tonight. You could be looking at 2 bottles that tell you the same things, but they taste completely different. And that's why if you can get a chance to go to whiskey events to taste these kind of drams, you should, because you sometimes find real hidden gems that you like. So I hope you'll find some of these gems tonight. So
you should get him more supply, you know, because most of it ran out.
That was a good night. That was a good couple of days.
Yeah.
But
I think most of the inventory went on the second day, but a lot of it went on the first one. Yeah.
I love that we don't do that with whiskey stores in Scotland. It was a real eye opener for me. I love the idea that people could just come in and socialize on the Friday, chat with friends, try a few whiskeys, and kind of chill out around the shop. None of the whiskey stores here would. I don't even think they would be allowed to do that. They probably wouldn't want us all sitting there. But what a great way to enjoy what a great way to find whiskeys you like. So, but that brings us. Let's try number 3 now. Now, number 3, the third dram tonight is going to be number 7 on your bottles. So it's a Strathmill.
Asaf, which store is selling those?
Which stores? One store right now, because Eagle from Sipil, you know, Whiskey Embassy, is not. I'm not sure he's selling them online, but the Whiskey Embassy, where is it? In Herzliya, I think.
Yeah.
So he's selling them. Whatever is left, he's selling over there. I think he have a few of them.
I think nothing left, at least at the whiskey
it's
festival
gone.
in
All of it is
Jerusalem.
gone.
He told me that everything is gone.
I was
Makes
talking
sense.
to
And it was, I think,
or a few days
I
ago.
was talking to Egal today, and he has a couple left, but not a lot. But he's got his next. We have his next order getting ready now, and he's going to have some new whiskies coming. Some of the ones you might see on the shelf behind me here, but hopefully they won't take too long to reach you. So, so yeah, the third one tonight we want to try is a Strathmill. It's another Speyside region. This one. What's that? I thought somebody said had a question there. But Strathmill, and then another great distillery owned by a big company. And if you go there now to the distillery, it's probably not even making whiskey because they do a lot of gin production and stuff there. Hopefully they'll realize the error of their ways and start making whiskey pretty soon again. You know, gin's nice, but it's not whiskey. And we called this one the Mill in the Shallow Glen. So again, if you didn't know it was Strathmill, but you know, it's if you know the area, it's not a big deep valley. So and it mentions mill in the title, so it gives you a little bit clue that this is a Strathmill. I'll show you the label.
Which number are we doing?
Here.
3 or 7?
And the label, if I scroll through here, there we go. So that's what the label on the bottle looks like.
So we actually can feel the burned wood on the nose. You can actually get the STR feeling. I get a lot of burnt wood on the nose.
So yeah, as Asaf says, this one is this one uses an STR white wine cask. So for those of you, I don't want to go crazy technical, but does anybody not know what STR is?
Everybody knows what STR is.
Oh, you guys are good. So you know STR, when they shave the inside of it, they've got an old cask they've used before. They send it back to the cooper. The cooper shaves the inside, they toast it, and then they re-char it. So they put new life into the old wood. Something I wish would happen to me. You know, as I get older and my joints start to seize up and things like that, I wish somebody could reinvigorate me the way they can reinvigorate some of these casks.
I thought you just need a shave.
Yeah, well, I trimmed it the other day, but you know,
isn't whiskey supposed to do that, to reinvigorate us all?
It doesn't heal the joints. It just means that it takes the pain away from. But yeah, STR is something the industry discovered a few years ago. Jim Swan, who was helping a lot of new distilleries. But when you think, I mean, a whiskey barrel is the staves on a new whiskey barrel are this thick, and the whiskey as it ages soaks into the barrel a little bit. It's an awful lot of wood there that still hasn't been touched. So if you take that top layer off, then you can get access to some of that new wood. You mentioned the sort of the burnt aromas again because they've recharred the cask. So, but this is interesting because it's a wine cask, 2, it's an STR. It's the first time we've got that this evening. But again, it's another Speyside distillery.
STR, is it matter the residual content of the white wine, or is it just gone with the shaving and everything?
No, I mean it will have been a white wine cask they've reshaved, but there will be elements, hopefully elements of the wine cask still there. I think with this one, when you use wine casks either for maturation or finishing, you get a different kind of flavor. This is when you start to get the different styles of fruits, perhaps berry fruit, especially with white wine. You know, it's not going to get jam or preserve. It's more like sort
dried,
of, you know,
dried grapes.
Yeah, white
raisins.
White grapes. Pears is a good one. Pears is definitely a good one.
Raisins and vanilla from the S.C.W.S.
Yeah, and maybe even you know, obscure fruits you don't normally associate with whiskey. Bit like the apricot mentioned at Dalyun, you know, with these ones with Strathmill, I think you get things like, you know, watermelon, just a little bit fresher. This one works well with a little bit of water in it. This one bottled at 59.8%, so it's pretty high up. It's wearing big boots, but don't be ashamed. Don't be scared. The good thing about the thing I love about single cask whiskey, and when you know you get to play with little droppers like this. Everybody in this room's got a different palate, so one drop of whiskey, one drop of water might change the whiskey so that it fits one person. 2 drops will change it again so it fits somebody else. Your palate will change every day. It's going to be different. So you can basically sit down and create a whiskey that suits you at that time. And I kind of like that. You get more of a say in, you know, the distillery isn't telling you how you have to drink it. This is yours. You decide. So
this one is very, very unique. The flavors here are, I don't know even how to start to describe it because it's very complex and it actually doesn't taste like any other whiskey that I've drank before. It's so
unique.
I feel a lot of things. Well, we started at 59.8, as you said, or 58.9, whatever you said. And we didn't feel the strength of the alcohol, but because of the complexity of it, we've decided that we are going to open it with a few drops, even before you said it. And then I liked it when you said it because it was right up our alley. It's wonderful. It's great. It's unique. Wow. Thank you for that. That one for me was worth even being here today.
It's only the beginning.
I mean, I'm pretending here because I don't have the Strathmill here. I've got a Teenanick here, but I do like playing with these little water droppers because you get to decide. It's your call. It's your whiskey.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about this.
For me, I get very heavy, like hazelnut with it, and it's something that I usually get with Paul John whiskey.
Oh, Paul John, it's a very unique distillery as well.
Yeah.
One thing that's very important about the S.C.W.S that we're talking about here, which we know S.C.W.S in Israel usually with red wine. So the unique thing about this thing is this is white wine. And you don't get this a lot.
I wanted to ask, is it common? Is it common?
No, it's not common.
The practice of S.C.W.S with white wine?
Well, I'm not a wine expert, but most wines that use barrels as part of the aging process are red wine. You know, white wine you tend to drink younger. A lot of white wine is you know, they age it in stainless steel tanks. So, you know, good white wine, there's a lot less white wine barrels out there than red wine. But also, and I need to check this because we all know, you know, the sherry cask, and you get the sherry cask cooperages where they're using sherry to season the cask, but it's not sherry you would drink. It's basically the sherry is there to make the cask a certain way, so the wood is worth more than the liquid. I'm not quite sure yet whether the market is so interested in white wine casks that they are deliberately making barrels that have been seasoned with a white wine. The fact that this is an STR cask would suggest to me that this has been a proper wine maturation cask that somebody has then recharged to use again. So
there is enough wine in barrels for the industry, as much as I know, and I'm a little bit in wine, so there is a lot of wine.
Even here, you know, the whiskey industry loves doing things with wine casks, but it tends to be, you will see you know, it's mainly red wines. Again,
Yeah.
probably easier to source. You don't have to buy them from wineries, you buy them from cooperages. And they, you know, the effects are more noticeable. I think white wine's always more delicate than red wine, but
what's interesting also is the color differences. If I'll compare it to, for example, to 6, which is also first fill bourbon cask, the shade is one, let's say one lower or one more bright. It's interesting because I would expect STR to make it a little bit darker even, and it's not like looks like that.
It could do, but again, we're working with a natural product here, so sometimes it does. I mean, I was in Germany for the last 2 days. I had a meeting with an importer, and they love sherry cask whiskey there. And you know, I had a little sample of I think it was a 12-year-old Kalila cask sample, Oloroso sherry, but it wasn't dark brown in color. And I think a lot of people there, they expect, when they see the word sherry cask on a label, they expect it to look dark. They expect it to look like an old piano color of wood. And it's not necessarily the case, you know. Again, you put the whiskey, you could have 2 barrels side by side you fill on the same day, and the liquid that comes out of each barrel will be totally different colors. That's why the blenders will batch them together. But it's harder to do that. If it's single casks, you have to live with the color you get. So but again, 3 whiskeys in, hopefully you see 3 different styles here. We're not trying to recreate. One of the things I like about indie bottlers, there's so many of us now, it's very popular. And you know, you hear it sometimes where they'll say, "Oh, every single indie bottler's got a Kalila," but every single indie bottler's got a different Kalila. If you tasted them all, they're all different, and I like that. That's where part of the fun comes in. So, okay. So next one, if we go to dram number 4, on your bottles, this will be bottle number 2. So we're going to start going into the darker whiskies here. So bottle number 2, if you've got it in the glass, this is Glenlossie, Speyside, 13 years old. We call this one the Curious Sister. The reason for the name, if anybody's ever been to Glenlossie, it often gets classed as called the sister distillery, because there's 2 distilleries using the same spot. I'm trying to remember which distillery it's the sister of, but we'll get to that. But now we're staying in Speyside, so classic, but now we go to sherry casks. So it's very stereotypical. Speyside whiskey and sherry cask, they go together, you know. They've been going together for hundreds of years. This is not Oloroso, it's not PX, this is Amontillado sherry. So again, if anybody's ever been to Jerez in Spain and went to tour, I've been there on vacation before, and I've toured some of the sherry houses. Because when you work in the industry, most of us work here because we like it. So you get to, you know, it's not work to go and see another distillery or a winery. It's still enjoyable. But sherry is one of those things where that complexity, that variety, it's there as well. But not a lot of people drink sherry anymore. But when you look at the different types of sherry out there and the huge number of producers and how many countries get it, the levels of complexity and differentiations everywhere. So, but Speyside whiskey, Glenlossie is quite a lovely distillery. Again, not one that you see a lot of distillery bottlings from themselves. So from an indie bottler's point of view, we get to show you something that the distillery doesn't show you. But we're going classic now, so let me know if this fits the classic profile. Normally, when sherry casks start to appear, we all know the kind of flavors. It's dead cliche to say.
Not typical sherry.
No, the sherry that it is inside is not a typical, Oloroso.
No,
Pedro
people
Jimenez. It's the Amontillado, and Amontillado has a special taste.
Amontillado.
Amontillado.
Actually, this nose is quite typical for Amontillado. I didn't get to taste yet, but the nose is quite typical.
Actually, it's Amontillado.
Amontillado.
No, Lado, with L. With double L.
When Spanish are talking, double L is pronounced as the
Amontillado.
You don't pronounce double L?
No, it's Amontillado.
No. Amontillado.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, you're right. You were right.
There's no way of, there's no logical explanation about putting letters that you don't use. Don't use.
That's Spanish.
Yeah, just talk to English and then speak to French.
Yeah.
Listen, don't talk.
Yeah, exactly.
You could come to Scotland and we have words that don't make sense. We have, we have words that you can't even pronounce because you have to say.
Yeah, in Israel, chiz, everything is chiz.
We are using.
This is it. You guys are good at that. You can say Loch Lomond properly.
Loch Lomond.
You go to England and they can't say it properly.
So you loch.
Yeah, and then if you want a real head spin, you can try Wales, where the two L's don't make a Y like they do in Spain. The two L's make a H. So you go to Llandudno, which is like a Welsh holiday resort, but it starts with two L's, and none of us outside of Wales know how to pronounce the damn thing. So
this is crazy. This is the good stuff.
And again, the other thing, single cask whiskies, there's blessings and curses with both with single cask whiskies, right? You find a good one, it's fantastic. And then you enjoy it, you go back to the store in 2 months' time to get another one, and it's gone because there is only normally 250 or 280 or 300 bottles.
Get a lot of dryness in your mouth for this.
Yeah. So if you find one that you don't like, just wait a couple of months and another one will come along. So maybe that one's better.
Like women.
They don't come along as frequently about my age, so
maybe go to Glasgow, I don't know.
Usually because I'm drunk, so I've been working.
It's all women gets prettier when you get drunk.
Oh dear, don't we didn't go that way.
So Eagle sends his regards.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah. He won't be able to join us, but he say there are a few bottles left from the Cask Noir series, and we'll be in touch to spread them around in the group.
Yeah. You know what? That a couple of weeks ago was my first visit to. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago was my first visit to Israel, and I don't want it to be my last. I need to come back. I think I need to come back. I would come back a couple of times a year if I could do so. Watch this space. We'll get another one of these nights at Whisky Embassy, or we'll do one of these tastings in person, hopefully at some point when we can all get in a room and try the bottles. So
you'll be in Israel again? I haven't. You'll be in Israel again?
Yeah, I hope so.
When?
As soon as we can. We've got the new ones coming out, but maybe I'll maybe try and get back either before the end of the year or early next year.
Yeah, don't try. These months are August, September, and June, July. Don't be here.
Oh no. Well, you know what happens. You've been to Ireland. You know what happens to people from Northern Europe when they go to hot countries. We just melt.
You get melted.
Yeah. People in Scotland
they
don't
get
get suntan.
Reddish.
Yeah, we don't get a suntan in Scotland.
Yeah.
We
like lobsters.
Yeah, we turn into lobsters. And we had this. It's raining today. This is now Scottish summer properly, right? But 2 weeks ago, we had about 2 weeks of solid sunlight and high temperatures. And none of us in Scotland know what we're doing, you know. People, you never see anybody with a perfect tan. We're either scarlet, we're red, we got sunburn. We don't know what we're doing. We couldn't keep our beer cold, so that's a national disaster here. So,
you know, when it was 25 degrees in Ireland, everybody went to the sea, to the beach, and the Israeli guys were the only ones with raincoats, and everybody was there.
I was in
hilarious.
I was in a couple of years ago. I went in a January. I was on vacation and I went to Las Vegas.
Ooh.
So
Nevada
January.
desert.
Yeah, it's January.
Yeah.
And I got one of those coach trips where you go to see the Grand Canyon.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes to your hotel, you get in the coach, and then it goes to the next hotel and more people get on. So by the time it came to my hotel, there was maybe 20 people on the coach already. And it's January in Nevada. And I got on and I'm wearing this. I didn't have a jacket. I had a shirt on and, you know, some jeans. And people looked at me like I was crazy because there's people in the bus and they've got winter coats on and hats and they're like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, this is summer for me. It was, you know, it was like 21 degrees. This is perfect summer for Scotland.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But yeah, so there you go. That's Glenlossie. And just to give you an idea of what the label looks like while we're here. The Curious Sister. If I can find it on this. Technology and me don't often get on. Here we go. So that's what the label looks like if you see it in a store.
Well,
right. The next one, we're staying with Speyside. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
We're going to go to one of the older classic distilleries in Speyside. So this is number 5 tonight. Is bottle number 5, and it's a whiskey we call Telford's Travels to Gascony. Now we're using wine casks here again, a little bit different, but this is from Craigellachie Distillery. So if anybody's ever been to Speyside, I know a few of you have been to Scotland, but has anybody been to the Speyside region before?
Yeah, I was.
2 hands.
Yeah.
When you go to
for sure.
Yeah, pretty much dead center in Speyside, you've got the Dufftown area. So Dufftown down to Craigellachie, Aberlour, and there you've got, you know, classic distilleries, you know, Glenfarclas, Glenlivet, you know, Craigellachie. Craigellachie is one of the older, so it's an older style. They don't normally let people in. It's one of these ones you can't really get a visit unless you're there during a festival. But this is what the label looks like. And Craigellachie's production style is a bit different because it's one of the old style. They produce a really kind of slightly heavier spirit. This is a distillery, I think, that until a few years ago, they might still use them actually, but until a few years ago, they were using worm tubs for condensing, which gave it a sort of slightly sulfury, slightly oily texture. The whiskey, it's got a different structure. So compare that to the Glenmurray or the Dalyun you tasted earlier, and you can feel it on the palate. It's a heavier, more robust liquid. And when you've got a spirit like that, I think it works well with active, powerful casks. This one is, and this is unusual because this one again finished in a Pacharank wine cask. So for the wine experts, Pacharank is a sweet, almost like a dessert wine, but from southwest France, I think down near the Spanish border, so Pyrenean region, near the town of Pau. But Pacharank is one of these.
It's a dessert wine or a fortified wine.
It's not a fortified wine. It's like a sweet white wine, Pacharank. It's
Yeah,
a region.
It's a dessert wine, according to the smell.
But it's not like a Sauvignon or a Chardonnay. It's a proper, you know.
No, very sweet and heavy wine.
Normally, if you see whiskey companies doing anything with sweet wine, it's usually Sauterne or maybe even Tokai. But Pacharank, similar kind of family, smaller region probably. I didn't even know what Pash Rank was until I saw this. And we were at a whiskey show in Poland, and Serge Valentine, who writes the Whiskey Fun blog, came to our stand and saw that we had a Pash Rank cask and asked for a sample. So he says he loves that kind of wine. So, but it's quite a powerful cask, but it's reacting really well with this robust, heavy, oily spirit that you get. Craigellachie is one of those distilleries. You know, probably the other kind of classic heavier whiskies like Benrinnes is similar. You've got that sort of, it's meatier, you know what I mean? It's a kind of,
because of the warm tubs.
I think because, well, worm tubs, they will say do certain things, and I don't even know if Craigellachie still has its worm tubs. I think it does. But yeah, worm tub whiskies, they don't strip out, you know, they cool the whiskey a different way, they cool the vapors a different way, the sulfur content changes, and the structure of the spirit that you then have to put in the barrel is different.
I heard that there are a lot of bacteria that's accumulating inside the pipes, and because of this reason, you get a lot of lactiness. How do you call it?
Yeah, the lactones.
It's like dairy flavored notes.
Yeah, lactones, as in like lactic acid and things like that.
Yes,
it is, and I mean, there's very few distilleries use worm tubs. Good comment, David. Reminds you of a Gewürztraminer. That's a great, again, one of those wine types I can't pronounce.
Yeah, nobody can.
Gewürztraminer.
But yeah, one of the owners, he's not here tonight, unfortunately, but you met him at the Whiskey Embassy. One of the owners of Brave New Spirits is German, so he pronounces that perfectly. That's one of his words. So, but yeah, Benrinnes is another one of these where you get that sulfury, oily meatiness. They still have, you know, again, they've modernized in recent years, but go back 10, 15 years, they were doing a much older style, much more relaxed. They weren't distilling at the kind of speed that some of the newer distilleries would do. But it's great. I mean, that's Craigellachie's been there for a long time. They've modernized very, very slowly, and they've actually got a good distillery range now. They've got, you know, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old. This is one of the few whiskies tonight where you can actually see a range of distillery bottles on sale in stores. But we don't want to replicate that. That's why we've done this one with the wine cask. So,
but funny, the nose of it, it's so Israeli for me. It's like going to a kibbutz and they have cows and they have food for cows. It's like sour oranges that have been rotten. So it's so funny. It's just taken to a very Israeli landscape when it's clearly not.
But this is why these kind of things are so much fun, because I'm guessing this is probably the only country anywhere in the world where somebody would have given us a tasting note like that.
Eden, it remembers you the tachmitz.
Exactly, the sour oranges that they give to the cows.
With the cotton seeds.
See, the next time I come to Israel, I'm going to need to go and try and find this stuff so I can see it. But
yes, taste, don't.
But this one actually goes very well with the. If you have a pipette and the water, use water with this one. It goes perfectly with it. A few drops of water, it open up perfectly. This is it goes.
See, this is cool because
doing magic for this.
Craigellachie, we've got another Craigellachie in one of the future batches that we'll release. But Craigellachie is one of those where it sometimes divides opinion, because some people like that texture, that little extra sulfuriness, and other people don't like the sulfur at all. Some folk can't detect it.
I get mainly licorice. So
you call it funkiness in rum. If you this is something that's very like it's not rotten eggs, but it's, you know, it's something that's very similar, very moderate rotten eggs.
No, I completely get it. and that's the sulfur element. So
yeah,
but compare it. If you, I don't know if they're on sale in Israel. They probably are. But if you see the distillery bottlings from Craigellachie, I was at a tasting. It's owned by Dewars, and I was at a tasting by Dewars a couple of nights ago. I got invited to, because I'm doing a presentation there next month. So they asked me to come down and they show them how this whiskey club works, their thing. And Dewars were there, and they had the Craigellachie. They had a couple of Craigellachies there, and they're excellent. But you know, they taste completely different to what you think they're going to taste like. And they're distillery bottling, so 43% or something, but completely different to what you've got in your glass, but excellent all the same. So
this one was I'll say it in Hebrew. זה היה הוויסקי האהוב על עומף בטעימה שהייתה אצל יגאל. אז זה, ברגע שהוא טעם את זה, הוא כזה ישר קם כזה ככה וחיפש ישר להביא בקבוק.
אני מסכים איתו.
זה כל כך האישיות שלו.
מסכימים לגמרי.
זה היה number one, this was the number one of עומף, one of the guys that were in Eagles.
That's right, he was at the tasting with
yes. So he just tasted it and said, give me a few bottles of this.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's why Eagle doesn't have it in stock.
Yeah.
So you can blame him. He's not here tonight, but I follow him on Twitter now, so I can send him a message and say, nobody can try the Craigellachie because you bought it all. So, oh well, hopefully, that's us 5 in. So, any favorites so far? Show us a show of hands.
It's very hard, man.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
The last one and the other white wine, yeah, for sure.
Oh, the STR white wine.
The STR and
So
this
you're
one,
on the Strathmill and the Craigellachie, right? Okay.
yes, exactly.
I can't tell. Everything is awesome. Everything is very, very unusual. Goes all the directions and it hits all your spots. Everything is different in a good way.
Till now, Delvini and the last one was my favorite. And
Delwini, wasn't it Delwini? Delwini is a different distillery.
No,
Delwini and
we haven't got any Dalwhinnie yet. So
yeah.
So I think one thing that's very important to note is that in groups like this, sometimes interesting is more important to us than good. Where something that we haven't ever had before, like number 5, is wow to us because it's different. And even one of the earlier bottles, like I really liked number 6, in my opinion, but it was very plain and simple. But it was very plain and simple. It didn't have complexity to it. So would I buy a bottle? Absolutely not, because I can say, oh, it's somewhere between those 3 bottles that I have on my shelf. Versus with number 5, I can say, this is unlike anything you've ever had, and I open up my shelf and show you 30 bottles.
Yeah. That's an awesome analogy, actually. Thank you. This is probably why we all get into whiskey. When we do these whiskey fairs, you get these whiskey festivals, and people come and they ask us, what's your favorite whiskey? And it's like it changes all the time.
Yeah, it depends on the mood. It depends on the time. It depends on so many. It can't be constant.
If I wake up and it's raining, my palate's different than it is if it's sunny. If I get stuck in traffic on the way to work, it changes the things.
Constant. It's the next bottle I'll open.
Yes, exactly.
And if you're ever lucky enough to, when you get these whiskey fairs, if you're ever lucky enough to be there before or after they open for the public, you'll see the folk that work there, and we're all going around everybody else's table trying everything new. We're always trying to find something. If somebody's got a new bottle, we all try it, because none of us do this job because it's a job. Most of us sort of.
As I said, it's heartbreaking, man.
Yeah,
I won't replace you in any occasion. No way.
But most of us.
Altruism level is so overwhelming that we are. Man, you should be a superhero for your altruistic qualities.
Most of us need a superhero because we spend most of our salary buying whiskey from other people. It's terrible. People sometimes we do these fairs and they say, "And how much is this whiskey?" And it's terrible because I don't know how much my own whiskey costs. I can tell you how much Craigellachie's cost in the shops and how much Glenmorangie costs, but I don't go out and buy my own. That's the bizarre thing, you know.
Let the marketing guys and the sales guy get to know this. I know how to make whiskey.
No, I'm supposed to be the marketing guy. I mean, I could suggest it.
Damn.
Oops.
But it's one of those. It's one of those. I think everybody's the same, you know. I bet you if you, I don't know him, but if you see Richard Patterson doing a show and you ask him how much a bottle of whiskey costs, he probably doesn't know which one, how much his Dalmore costs. He made the stuff.
Yeah.
His reward is that he doesn't have to go and pay for it. So, and he gets to have fun. So. He's probably been tasting it professionally for so long in his lab that when he leaves, he wants to try somebody else's whiskey. So
makes sense.
They all go home and drink Lefroy.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So I'm just reading the comments. That's called mooching. Quarter of a kidney. Yeah. Right. Shall we take the 6th dram? So staying in Speyside, and it's another classic. I mentioned it during the Craigellachie one. This is going to be bottle number 3. And this is probably the other. There's a couple. Speyside's lovely. I mean, what we got 45, 50 distilleries there. It's a small region. You can drive from one end of the region to the other in, you know, an hour or something. But there's like 45 or 50 distilleries, and you know, huge history, all different types. Some of the most well known, maybe even the most, you know. Sort of distilleries where you see people fighting for the bottles in different countries around the world, you know, like Macallan and all this kind of stuff. But this one is from Benrinnes, and it's another one of the distilleries that you hardly ever get to go in and see because, you know, it's not open to the public. This is a 13-year-old Benrinnes. It's a 57%, and this one, it's another wine cask. But this time we're going. This is not the white wine. This is red wine. So we're going Saint-Emilion. This is a first fill. Saint-Emilion wine. It'll be a finish, probably of a few years, but you know, big, heavy, jammy, you know, berry fruit French wine. First fill wine cask, so it's not a cask from a winery that's been used for whiskey before.
I apologize. We're on number 3.
But this is bottle number 3. Other distilleries might say, other producers might say different, but I think, you know, we can use sherry casks once, twice, 3, whatever. I think with wine casks, they give up a lot of their flavor very quickly. So I used to work for another distillery. We did a lot of things with Tony Port, and the first filled, when we used the casks the first time, the whiskey was amazing. It was almost pink, really fruity. It was like, you know, the jam you put on your bread at breakfast. If you used that same cask a second time, you still got the fruit flavor, but you got none of the color. So the wine cask or the port cask in that instance gave up everything really quickly. And most of the wine cask things that we do, either as Cask Noir or some of the other ranges like Yellow Edition, it tends to be wine casks that have not been used before. We're using them for the first time. We want as much of that wine influence to go into the whiskey. So
another thing with wine casks actually is because of the lower alcohol content, they behave in a way something like virgin oak or first fill casks. They've had much less taken out of the wood by the previous, let's say, liquid in the cask.
Ah, okay.
And because of that, sometimes of white wine casks, you get a lot of color because the wood is not giving up the color like it does in bourbon.
Yeah.
You can get dark whiskey from white wine casks.
Well, again, you know, the char on the inside will have a contributing factor as well. But that's interesting because, you know, very basic whiskey education, it's, you know, sherry casks go brown, bourbon casks go gold. But we're now doing more. Every distillery is doing it. They're now doing more and more stuff with wine casks. most distilleries, you know, around the world, we share exporters with people that work with wine. Some of the distilleries are owned by companies that also own vineyards. So that conversation that might not have happened 50 years ago is happening now. And because in a lot of cases, distilleries are bottling their whiskies younger than they used to be, because, you know, so much people are interested. And it's getting harder to get old whiskey at a price that you can afford. The wine cask work lets us do things with younger whiskey to make it interesting. It would be pretty boring if everybody released 5-year-old bourbon cask whiskey and nothing else. But somebody mentioned Paul John earlier on, and you know, it's a world whiskey, but it's a good example. And the other one to look at is distilleries like Penderyn in Wales, or Milk and Honey, actually. You know, they're doing brilliant work with young spirit. It's getting recognized, and it's proven that you don't have to wait until something's 20 years old to enjoy it. So, but this is a Benrinnes, and it's a red wine. This probably would have started being filled into an American oak or an ex-bourbon cask, and then for the last few years it goes into that wine cask, and the wine cask gives up its color very quickly. That's why this one's a bit darker. If you hold up to the light, you normally get a sort of slightly pink reddish tinge on it.
Very oily, very.
Well, this again, Benrinnes. That's probably the distillery, because Benrinnes, and this one is we call this one Ruthrie the Wanderer. I'll show you the label as we go. Benrinnes is an old style of distillery. They have a very sharp. If you ever see a distillery and you see the pot still, and the arm, the neck that goes over the top, the line arm they call it. They have very shallow line arms at Benrinnes, and it again, it's all about the different copper contact.
And worm tap.
And it's another one like Craigellachie, where you get that sulfur, where you get that extra character, robust, the oiliness that you don't get from the light summery whiskies.
Actually, here you don't get any. I don't get any sulfur, and in the Craigellachie, I got quite a bit.
It's more of a texture thing with the. I'm just trying to find the Craigellachie, the Benrinnes label.
Benrinnes always has, you know, body to it.
Yeah, it's a robust spirit. That's the label if you see it. And the reason we used that name, when Benrinnes was originally built, it wasn't called Benrinnes. They called it the Line of Ruthrie, Lyne, Line of Ruthrie Distillery. So when we were trying to think of a name for it, we used the old name. So somebody that Googles distillery in Ruthrie would probably find the forerunner to Benrinnes.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, it smells so good, and one of the best.
What number is it now?
3.
3.
Thank you.
But I'd love to say, I mean, I've never been in Benrinnes Distillery, because again, it's one of those ones, they don't have a visitor centre. And unless you know somebody that works there, you probably won't be allowed in. I'd love to go in and see it. I've read about it. I've seen pictures of the insides, you know, but it's one of those distilleries that's had a crazy checkered past. You know, it's had fires, and they've changed and redesigned and all sorts of stuff. The distillery now is different. I mean, I think they kind of revamped the distillery about 10 years ago. So they've got more modern practices at Benrinnes now, apparently. I haven't seen them in person, but this whiskey predates that. So this whiskey would have gone into cask kind of 2008, 2009 probably. So
how come you don't have any vintages on your casks?
Vintages is there's not a lot of vintages in whiskey. Bal Blair do it.
No,
but,
just the year of distillation.
Yeah, actually, well, if I show you the label, for instance, now we designed these labels to look like vintage movie posters, but I'm going to zoom in on this. But there is actually, if you go to subtraction, we have got the maturation and the distillation dates down on the labels.
Oh,
so
good.
So they're down there at the bottom. So you know when it was filled, you know when it was bottled. And it's a process of, and of course it's single cask. So it's not, you know, when you see a 15-year-old whiskey on a supermarket shelf, that might be, you know, that only has to reflect the youngest whiskey in the bottle. So it could be 15, 16, it could be 20-year-old whiskey in there, but it's labeled as a 15-year-old. We've thought about doing vintages because I know Balblair do it. They actually put the year. So you get Balblair 2007, 2010.
Different releases.
Yeah.
They stopped actually.
Yeah.
They stopped.
But,
they did it until I think
Yeah, they finished doing it.
or
Yeah.
2007.
Have they stopped doing it?
Yeah, now it's
The
just age assessments.
The last few Balblairs I bought in the airport when I was traveling. So they probably had, but that would have been before Corona. So that's going to have been 4 or 5 years ago now. My God. But yeah, I remember them.
Vintages.
Yeah, I remember them, and they had, you know, they used to have a year on there, whereas with indie bottlers, it's one barrel, so we can put on, you know, we only put the month and year on this, but on some of the other whiskies we have the actual date the cask was filled, and it's right there on the label, so you get the ultimate attention to detail if you want it.
You know, we need the dates for 15, 20 years from now, when people look for their birthday cask. So it's important.
Yeah. No, some of our whiskies do. The problem is, I mean, like a lot of smaller producers, we until recently we didn't have our own bottling hall. So you get your cask, you send the cask to the bottler, you send your empty bottles to the bottler, they fill them, you get the bottles back. But there's so much demand to use bottlers in Scotland at the moment that there's often queues. So you could phone the bottler and say, right, we've got this cask, we want to bottle it now. And they say, oh, we can't fit you in for 2 months. So it's harder for us to guarantee the date of the bottling. So we just have month and year there. But now that we've got our own warehouse, we can do some of our own bottling. So you might see now more of the bottles will have a date, an exact date. Whether or not that means you have to stare at every single bottle to find one that was bottled on your birthday, that's a good search to do. So
I might be biased because I like Ben Rennes, but for me this one is the best so far.
Problem is everyone is just
same for me.
One of the things we did in the next set of Cask Noir, now Eagle's getting some of these. Don't phone them and ask for them because it takes a little while to get them to Israel. Then they've got to clear the customs and things like that. They're still in Glasgow now, but there is a 22-year-old Ben Rennes in the next set of Cask Noir. It was a quarter cask Oloroso, so there was only, you know, less than 200 bottles exist.
Don't say anything to Eagle. He will kill you if you know it before it arrives.
Oh no, he's ordered it. I know, but it was
No, I'm talking to the guys.
How many is he getting?
I don't know. I don't have. I'm using my laptop for this. I can't check the orders. I hope he's actually getting it. I know he's getting a lot of the new ones.
You get an inside information right now, guys.
I'm sure there is. You know what? If he's not, you guys are going to kill me now. It's a 20, but there is in that next series. There's a 22-year-old Ben Rennes. I will need to check before we go. I can check as we're sitting. Let me check. I'll check my emails as we're going, and I'll let you know if he's got some coming. So
yeah.
But it's a 22-year-old Ben Rennes, and it's in an Oloroso sherry cask. But you get that oily, that heavy. I mean, you said you like the Ben Rennes. This is proper old-fashioned stuff. It's not a wine finish. It's a sherry cask. Heavy,
I'm old. I like old stuff.
But you know, I've tried it. I like it. So it's let me just see where we are. If I can find it, I might even have it on the WhatsApp. I'll check as we go. But there, that's a Ben Rennes. So I hope, again, you're finding things that you like here. You said this was your favorite. Has this become a favorite for anybody else so far?
Yep.
Good.
Definitely up in the contending.
It's great.
I wanted to ask about the, maybe it's not very whiskey geek like, but I want to ask about the labels. And I looked at them, and each one of them was like a work of art. I want to ask about the process of making them and who made them and the decision, and also the name Cask Noir. What does it mean for you?
Right. There's the official one. Cask Noir, if you guys know, so there's a movie, a cinema genre called film noir. And it's like the old 1950s and 40s Alfred Hitchcock movies. And if you guys go on Google and you look for the movie poster for the movie Vertigo, the old Hitchcock one. So we wanted the label, and I'll show you. Let me just check this. I found the Sipple WhatsApp, but we wanted to try and find. We wanted to have fun and sort of create a kind of vintage movie poster. We wanted this to look like, imagine you were walking down a street in America in the 1950s and you walked past one of those old vintage movie theaters. We wanted these to look like the posters that were on the wall outside. So a lot of these are complex whiskies. We wanted them to look like the complex, like the old Hitchcock thrillers. Obviously, we can't use the Hitchcock thing because they would sue us. But it's a little bit of that. And then we tried to think, well, what would you call this movie? And that's where the name comes in. So the name is a cryptic link to the distillery. On the next set of Cask Noir, there's a Highland Park in there, and we're not allowed. Normally, when you buy casks from Highland Park, they ask you not to put the name on the bottle, so you don't have the distillery on the label. So that particular movie, if you like, is called the Magnus Experiments, because if you look at the history of Highland Park, it was built by the builder of it was a guy called Magnus Jonsson. So he was illegally distilling.
He was a preacher or something like that.
Was that?
I think he was a preacher or something like that.
Yeah, he was a preacher and a butcher or something. But an illegal distiller, and then they arrested him for it, and it took him, I think, 20 years to get a license to be officially allowed to distill. But he was like the preacher, and he was experimenting in the dark with a little distillery. So we like that kind of stuff. So let's see.
And why are we talking about names? What about the name of the company?
What name? Well, our company.
Yeah.
Well, Brave New Spirits. Well, at the moment it's only whiskey, but we didn't rule out. The reason we said Brave New Spirits is because we didn't rule out going in to do, and we've got casks of rum. So we're going to do some single cask rum as well. But we wanted to do, we don't have 200 years of heritage, so we don't have fathers and sons and generations. So I also think Adam and Alex are probably fans of Aldous Huxley or something with his Brave New World. So he wanted to do Brave New Spirits. So, but I've just checked the order. That it's a different Ben Rinnes, but there is Ben Rinnes coming to Israel, but it's on the yellow edition label, so it's going to come in a bottle like that, which has got all the details on the label down there, so you can see more of it.
Maybe say a few words about the yellow labels, because nobody knows anything about this. It's a different. It's not Cask Noir. It's a different lineup that contains different bottles. Can you tell maybe the difference between the two?
Yeah. As you've noticed, the Cask Noir labels are kind of creative and weird and wacky. We have a designer in house. We tell her what we're going to call the whiskey. We tell her what we think the label theme can be, and then Gosha will go off and she'll try and design something, and it goes back and forth a few times, and we come out with a label. So every single time we do a release, we have a different label on it. The difference is we have another single cask brand called Yellow Edition. And if I show you, I've got a couple of bottles here. Put one up to the camera. So what you get with Yellow Edition is all the bottles have this same label. And what changes is this front panel. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, we can.
And this is where you get the distillery, the cask type, the maturation dates. It's not, just because it's not a designed label.
Distillery?
Sorry?
Where you see the distillery?
This one, it'll say on this particular one, you'll see distilled at Dao Yuan Distillery.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Great.
can see clearly.
Yeah. So again, but we can release more whiskies in this format because we don't have to design a new label every single time. The whiskey's the same quality. It's coming from the same warehouse. Again, we're doing a mixture of the classic bourbon and sherry casks and the wine casks. Some of these are on their way to Israel as well.
So it's going to be like something like a core range for you. This is not.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, we can release maybe 1 or 2 batches of Cask Noir every year, which will be 6 or 8 bottles every time there's a new release.
But this
with
is
the
going to
yellow
be
edition,
constantly every time with the same labeling, but different distilleries.
Yeah, if you think about how Gordon MacPhail do it with their connoisseur selection, and it lets us use the same bottle and the same basic design. We can change the contents. We update the info on the label. The whiskey's just as good. So there's a Ben Rinnes coming to Israel there. So it's not the quarter cask one, but it's another classic wine finished Ben Rinnes. So the Ben Rinnes has prompted some conversation, huh? Excellent. Excellent. Love it. Thank you very much.
It wasn't like this at the Eagles, it was probably the least one to talk about. This is different now than what expected. I actually thought that it's going to be the same, but it's going different directions right now. Yeah.
But that's
nice.
If we did this next week, maybe it would take a different direction again.
Yeah,
so we're doing them in a different order than we did them at Egal, remember? So
yes.
We're going to move on to our 7th one of the evening. It's bottle number 8. And now we haven't had an Oloroso sherry cask tonight, but we've had an Amontillado.
Yeah,
we're going to go to the other extreme end. This is a PX cask. And this is a 10-year-old. It's from Macduff Distillery. Again, not a distillery you see a lot of distillery bottlings from.
This one is the one that I bought.
Is this the one you bought on the night?
This is 3.
Beautiful color.
I bought 3 of them.
So Asaf's the reason nobody else can buy it.
Yeah.
But this is, Macduff. Nowadays, I think they bottle their own whiskies under the Devron name. But this is a Macduff, 10 years old, PX cask, first fill. You've got the dark color. I don't have one here, but grab a nose. I remember this one. This has just been, there was a magazine in Scotland that said this was the best whiskey they could buy in Scotland for under £100. So instantly it kind of sold out here. But PX is like,
Sweet tooth.
The muscly, it's the sherry, it's the dry raisins. It's a really, really sweet spirit. And it works well with this. It's a very, very sweet. And I mean, in Spain, they use PX as a drizzle on ice cream and things like that. So it works really well here. But it puts so much into that whiskey.
It's funny. It's in first smell and taste. It's more like a rum than a whiskey.
Yeah, it's we have a, I don't know if we have a cake in Scotland called Black Bun, and you have it in New Year as a tradition thing, and a little cake like this, but it weighs a lot because it's like compressed raisins, like almost like they've been in a pressure cooker. So it's super, super dense. And it's just a trip through the blackcurrant field, this one. The name of Fife is a region in Scotland, but it's nowhere near where Macduff Distillery is. So the Thane of Fife, again, for the trivia fans, if anybody's ever read Macbeth from Shakespeare, I haven't, but we use the Shakespeare reference in this to try and make everybody think we'd read literature. But there's a character in Macbeth called the Thane of Fife. And in the book, the Thane of Fife is the Earl of Macduff, so there's the link to Macduff Distillery. So,
okay.
Luckily, we didn't use Shakespeare as an influence on any of the other labels because I think we would have run out of ideas by about the second bottle. So,
this is very, very sweet whiskey, but it's very. it's not going into the sherry bomb categories because it's very balanced. Usually when it goes into the sherry bomb, it's unbalanced and it's very sweet. It loses its character as a whiskey for me. But this one, you can still get the whiskey here. It's not losing every aspect of whiskey. It's still there. This is why.
You know, when you get the sherry bomb, I mean, I'm not sure sherry bomb whiskies are always PX anyway. I think they.
No. You can get Oloroso for you get a lot of kind of sherry bombs. Usually it's Oloroso and PX, but you get a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's one barrel. We've got in the next range of Cask Noir, we've got a grain whiskey that uses PX casks. The PX casks we got hold of.
This is nice.
Yeah, but the PX casks we got are really powerful. So
which distillery?
Grain.
I think it's a Cameron Bridge. Off the top of my head, it's a Cameron Bridge and a PX cask.
That's nice. I'm gonna get this one. If it's gonna get here.
I need to check. There are some grain whiskies coming. Because I remember when I first spoke with S.C.W.S years ago, over a year ago. Grain whiskey is still fairly new. I mean, everybody knows single malt. Everybody knows blended whiskey. Even in Scotland, grain whiskey. You know, when if you release 6 whiskies, and one of them is a single grain, the single grain will be the slowest selling one. It might be the best whiskey there is. But people see single malt, and those 2 words mean a lot. They add a value. But you're seeing, and it's nice. You're seeing more and more single grain whiskey appearing on the market. The good thing from an indie bottler's point of view, the grain distilleries produce a lot, so we can get the stock, we can get the liquid, and it responds well to powerful casks. So, but this one does. This one just. I love what PX. I like.
Until now, is my favorite.
I like PX. I like PX sherry anyway. You know.
Are you going to bring grain to Israel?
Are we sorry?
Are you going to bring the grain whiskey to Israel?
There are some grain whiskies coming.
Really?
Yeah. So Egal's going to hate. I'm going to get a phone call from Egal tomorrow, and everybody's going to phone up and want to know where all these new whiskies are. But there are.
Don't everybody call Egal. I'm going to call him yesterday and see what's in stock for the Cask Noir.
Wait, let us test this too. Wait.
And I'll call and see and figure out what's going on.
Is amazing.
Put me on a wait list for the grain whiskey.
I missed
that.
Sorry,
why people like grain is that it has lower price range usually.
Yeah. Well, you imagine,
usually grain comes in bourbon casks. If it comes in a different cask than bourbon, you got probably got something special here.
But what you can also do, I mean, we go to a lot of distilleries to buy the casks, and some of the distilleries we've got tonight, they might produce 3 or 4 million liters of spirit a year. They keep most of that for themselves. They might sell a few 100,000 liters to blenders or independent bottlers. But grain distillery, Cameron Bridge produces 110 million liters of spirit a year because it doesn't use pot stills. They're using column stills. It's like a factory. They run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's lots of spirit because this was originally the spirit that they was sold to blenders. They mix it with, single malt, and it becomes Johnny Walker. It becomes Dewar's. It becomes, but people have realized over the years that grain whiskey can be good when it's drunk on its own as well. And it seems to work especially well if you're using unusual casks. We've done a couple of grain whiskies over the years, usually in wine casks or sherry casks, but the results are always good. And you're right, they make so much of it that it's cheaper for producers to buy. So you can get grain whiskey, 15-year-old grain whiskey might be the same price as a no age statement single malt.
It's very underrated.
Is it?
Yeah, and it's still new, but it's still new for lots of people.
Like mixed grains, or what kind of grains?
Well, this is where it gets confusing because single grain just means it's the same as single malt. It's when you see the word single, it just means it's the product of one distillery. So
it could be a mash bill of few kind of grains. It's not.
It's a mash bill of all kinds. Yeah, it's a mash bill of all kinds of grain. There will be some malt. There will be some malted barley in there.
Grain? Sorry, what kind of grain?
Oh, I mean, they can use anything: corn, rye, wheat. In Scotland, it's probably a mixture.
In Scotland, yeah, it's a mixture: rye and wheat and a little bit of corn.
And they put a little bit of barley in there because you need the enzymes from the barley to start the fermentation.
It's like a corn. You really feel the corn.
But
in US, it will be mainly corn. In Scotland, it will be mainly rye and wheat.
But it's not one particular cereal type. It will be, you know, that the mash bill will be different for every distillery. So they might have 20% of one thing, 20% of another. They always have to have a little bit of malted barley in there because they need the enzymes from there to start the process. But it's not 100% barley. So, but grain whiskey is
in grain whiskey in Scotland. Do you have the same laws as single malt that you need to be in the size? Like a set size of a barrel, or is it just free range for all?
The production rules with Scotch whiskey has to be a certain age, but blended whiskey, which is grain and malt together, you don't have to bottle that in Scotland. So there are some different rules, but normally the producers here, I think we all adhere to the same rules. You can't call it Scotch whiskey if it's not 3 years old. You will call it single grain, or you can call it blended grain if it's 2 grain distilleries together. So a lot of the same kind of policies, the same sort of structures to the naming of things transfers into single grain as well. So you'll have single malt, you'll have single grain, you'll have blended malt, you'll have blended grain. If you mix malt and grain together, you've got blended whiskey. Then with blended whiskey, you don't have to bottle that in Scotland. You can bottle that anywhere in the world. Whereas in single malt, you have to bottle that in Scotland. I think single grain, we probably all still bottle it in Scotland anyway. So I don't know if that rule, I don't know if we can bottle that somewhere else.
But if it's bottled outside of Scotland, you can write Scotch.
Yes. No, they're very, very, very strict about that. The barley that they make the whiskey from could come from outside Scotland, but you have to bottle it and age it in Scotland to be allowed to call it Scotch whiskey. So.
Do you think that grain whiskey will be the next malt, like malt was like single barrels, then after the barrel, the blended?
I don't think so, because grain whiskey still the crucial. I mean, grain whiskey is it's there for blended whiskey. It's the crucial part of blending whiskey, and of course, blending whiskey was around a long time before single malt was. You know, there's a reason why names like Johnny Walker and Dewars and Ballard, they're all household names. You know, they were originally blenders. There's less grain distilleries than there are single malt distilleries, but they're much bigger. So they'll work in harmony. But I don't think single grain will take over from single malt. It's a different product at the end of the day. So
not much as a takeover, but be the next thing with the new thing that, you know, single malt.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting, and there's definitely it's definitely interesting. It's definitely more single grain coming onto the market. Both ends of the scale, because you can get very old single grain, and you can still afford to buy it. You know, you can get 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old single grain. Whereas if that was a single malt, it would be the price of a house and nobody would ever buy it to drink. But you can get old single grain, and it's still maybe only a few £100, and you can buy it, you can try it, you can see what it's like to have a spirit that's been in a barrel for that long. And then at the younger end, you've got grain whiskey. A lot of the bartenders are getting involved in grain whiskey. They're using it for whiskey cocktails. It's, you know, maybe less people are buying a bottle of grain whiskey to take home to sit and relax with. But if you're in a bar and you're having a highball, maybe they'll use grain whiskey. I think there's more versatility.
There's one thing that's a crucial difference between single malt and grain whiskey is the distilling process itself. Usually, grain whiskey is distilled in column stills.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very big difference between the distilling, the end. You know, it's something that gets a different thing, different taste, different everything. Yeah.
I know, exactly. And this is, you know, grain distilleries are not pretty places. They look like factories. They look like, you know, because if you grain distilleries are also the supplier of spirits for things like gin and vodka. So that's why they need them, and why they can produce hundreds of millions of liters a year from some of them. But it's nice that the whiskey industry have recognized that this is not just an ingredient for blended whiskey anymore. They can do things with it. So again, we're finding new things. I mean, whiskey's quite traditional, but we're finding new things to play with. So always. But how are you on the PX? Fans?
No.
Pros, cons?
No.
He doesn't like sweet whiskey.
Too sweet. Too sweet for me.
Too sweet?
Yeah, I don't like the sweet.
Have you ever been to Spain?
Yes, I have been to Spain. I used to live in Spain for half a year, but it was long
when
time
you go down
ago.
to when you
Spain
go
and
down
Portugal.
when you go down to Cadiz or Jerez, and you get ice cream, and they put PX sherry over the ice cream
on top of it. You're right.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
But with the ice cream, it's the mix the taste. I don't know, but I cannot drink the topping. Not me.
For me, it's surprisingly balanced. Usually when I see PX, I said, no, it's not for me, PX.
But this one is more balanced, yeah.
But this one, yeah, it just come together very nicely, and awesome whiskey.
Love it. Thank you. Well, I'm glad none of you have run away screaming yet, so we might do that with the next one. So we haven't had a smoky whiskey yet, and we're gonna go now and get some smoky whiskeys. So the 8th whiskey tonight is bottle number 4. And it's for the first time this evening, we're not having a Speyside region. This is Highland region, but it's weird because the Highland region is a huge region, and this is probably one of the furthest south distilleries in the Highland region. It's about 25 miles from where I'm sitting now. Because the Highland line starts just outside of Glasgow. So
which one is that?
This is The Secrets of Bonnie Banks. It's bottle number 4, and it's from Loch Lomond Distillery.
Yeah.
So let me find a picture of the label for you.
And this one uses hybrid stills.
Yeah. Loch Lomond. Has anybody ever seen the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course.
With Johnny Depp.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Well, the Gene Wilder one's better than Johnny Depp.
Gene Wilder all the way.
Yeah,
for sure. You're right.
Completely.
But the new version with John.
Yeah, Johnny Depp's a heathen bike. You shouldn't change a classic, but he did. This is the label for The Secret of the Bonnie Banks.
Okay.
The reason for the Bonnie Banks name, if anybody remembers the song about you take the high road, I'll take the low road, and the Bonnie Banks of Loch Lomond. So we decided that Bonnie Banks could be a film star. But whoever said hybrid, you're exactly right. Loch Lomond Distillery is like the Willy Wonka factory for whiskey. So you go to some distilleries and they've got 2 pot stills or 4 pot stills and a couple of washbacks. You go to Loch Lomond, they've got pot stills, they've got column stills, they've got their own cooperage, they're putting single malt through the column still, they're putting grain whiskey into the pot still, they're doing it's like a mad scientist layer. And the end result is that they can produce, they don't just have one style of whiskey, they produce lots of different styles. So they've got their standard Loch Lomond single malt, unpeated. They do, they now name them after the islands in the loch. But this is a style they called Inchfad. They also do a style called Rossdu or Old Rossdu, which was, from the days before Loch Lomond was even involved in the S.W.S. So they were doing stuff that probably wouldn't be allowed to call single malt, But this is technically a Highland from a distillery that's almost in the lowlands. And it's a smoky whiskey from a distillery that's not known for doing smoky whiskey. So it's one of these ones that plays around with your head. It's a wine cask, so it's a Merlot wine. So again, check the color on this. This will have a lovely kind of red tint. But it's not a style of whiskey they make a lot of, so it's a little bit unusual. And again, Loch Lomond was one of those distilleries in Scotland that was known for producing lots of low-priced single malt, so it never carried a huge price premium the way some of the more famous distilleries up in Speyside did. But by God, the whiskey they were producing is incredible. You know, we've got casks of various styles of Loch Lomond, and I think we'll never get tired of trying them to find the ones that we want to bottle. And this is a little bit different. You know, you've got smoke, you've got fruit, you've got I mean, even our tasting notes for this were kind of weird. You know, we got licorice, all sorts, the candy, you know. So there's a sugary sweetness, there's smokiness, but not like Isla smoke. It's like barbecue smoke.
It's always weird.
It's not like Ireland. It's not like an Ardbeg or something, you know?
Yes. This is the one that I like the most here.
Actually, and normally it catches everybody because it's heavily peated, but when you say heavily peated, everybody thinks, oh, Ardbeg or Lefroy, and it's nothing like that. Nothing like that.
If you compare it, it's something like 30 ppm or something like this, 35 ppm.
I find it's very unbalanced.
Ardbeg and Lefroy.
Unbalanced, yeah. It doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't want to be a smoke. It wants to be a smoky, fruity. I didn't enjoy it, to be honest.
This is perfect.
I enjoy it, but I enjoy it.
First critic of the night,
in all sorts of different directions. Like it's sweet, salty, smoky, fruity.
It wants to be a little bit of everything.
Yes, perfect.
Pasta mirubello pasta.
And for me, it's the most interesting this evening.
Yes.
This is what this whiskey does whenever we put it in a tasting. You get the debate immediately. Because some people
bite the people. Yeah, like Lefroy.
I like that. I like that. This is what it should be. This is what, you know, whiskey is one of these things. Not, you know, we've got 140 odd distilleries in Scotland now. They're all producing a couple of different whiskies each. Then you take the independent bottlers. If you work it all out, there's thousands of combinations. So you just have to keep trying the whiskies, and you will find some like this that split groups, that divide opinions.
This is what we're looking for. This is what whiskey geeks are looking for. Exactly.
You know,
well,
we put it late in the tasting because by then the whiskey from earlier will have kicked in, and if everybody wants to have a fight now, everybody's fluid, everybody's languid. So, you know,
adding water improved it by far.
Well, again, everything's bottled in cask strength. I mean, up here, this is a 17-year-old, so it's had some time to soften down. Not actually that strong at the bottling strength. It's bottled at 48%. But yeah, a little bit of water might push some of the flavors back and bring some flavors forward. So,
actually, when you say it's not like Ardbeg and Lefroy, you're talking about the recent Ardbegs and Lefroys that are much more ash-driven and smoke-driven, and older Ardbegs and Lefroys are more peat-driven.
Yes.
And this one, no smoke, no ash, it's all peat. And when people talk about smoky or peated whiskeys and count, you know, state the phenol count, you're not saying anything about the character of what the peat does. And recent Ardbegs and Lefroy, I don't like as much as I did the older ones that were much more peaty and much less smoky and ashy. This is the old style.
Yeah, well, you know what? I've been working with whiskey for about 15 years. I worked with wine before, and then I went. When you live in Scotland, you invariably end up working with whiskey because you don't want to, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a whiskey store in Glasgow, and the lady that runs it, I was in to say hello last week, and she used to work for one of the big liquor store chains in the UK years ago, and she has a lot of whiskey still that they had back then. So if you walked into an Oddbins 20 years ago, you could buy a Lafroig 15-year-old. So if you bought a Lafroig 15-year-old, if you bought a Lafroig 15-year-old in 1999, that would have been distilled in the mid 80s. And she had one of these bottles that, just been sitting in her cupboard for 20 odd years, and it was sublime and tasted nothing like what you were just saying, Yuri, the new island peated style,
I actually just finished a bottle of Lafroig 10, 40%, bottled around 2002.
Okay.
And that was so different from what they make today. I mean, it's 40%, but it feels much richer than what they make today. Yep.
Yeah,
No,
and
this one is later. This one is around 2005, I think.
No, I don't think so.
10th anniversary of Lafroig.
Oh, yes, this is 10th anniversary for Lafroig Friends.
I can tell you, let me get something, okay? I'll tell you why.
But the industry was, again, think about it.
If that was
if that was a 10-year-old in 2002, so that would have been distilled in 1992. The whiskey industry was almost dead. In 1992, the whiskey industry was in a bad place. We had so many distilleries that closed down. We lost Brora, Port Ellen, Lochside, Rosebank. All of these distilleries had closed in the decade before. So by 1992, a lot of the whiskey companies weren't investing because the whiskey industry was going through that recession. So they probably weren't experimenting. They weren't trying to find new casks. They were probably using refill barrels wherever they could to save the money. But if you find some of the whiskey from then, some of it's incredible. Single malt wasn't getting the kind of prices it got now. So you would go into a supermarket and you could find 18-year-old single malt on the shelf for not much money. Nowadays, you can't find anything in a supermarket.
For 89 pounds.
Okay, guys, no one drink whiskey for 5 years and then we get good whiskey for low prices. Yeah? All right? Everyone agrees? Yeah?
We need another recession.
In 10 years.
Good luck, Mered.
What I wanted to tell you about the old Lafroig.
You already lost the.
Let's see. You can
because
see the
of the
label. Yeah, you can see this here.
Japanese
this one was mail in. You had to fill in everything and mail it in. Your bottle had the internet code. So it was a few years later when you already had an internet code to join the Friends of Lafroig, rather than this mail-in label, which gave me plot 6067.
We have the lady that does our social media she's just moved to Glasgow. She used to live on Islay, and she worked at Lafroig, and she showed me some pictures from the Friends of Lafroig, and you got the little patch of grass, and there was somebody had put a flag on it. They'd got married on their little patch of grass. So but yeah, I mean, think about it. 1990s industry was in recession. There has been in Glasgow in the last 5 or 6 years, we've got Glasgow Distillery, Clydeside Distillery, Rosebank reopening, Falkirk Distillery. So alone there, that's more distilleries than opened in the whole of Scotland in the whole of the 1990s. And that's just in the lowlands here. The industry moves up and down, but at the moment it's not slowing down. And I think it's really cool to see what distilleries like Ardnamurchan are doing, and what Nicknean, if you've got it there. There's some real, everybody's doing something a little bit different.
It's going to be very interesting when those distilleries get whiskeys out that are 20 years old.
Well, that's the other problem, because to stay alive, a lot of them sell their young stock. So it takes
well, there's the big
whether
question
they're going to have whiskey.
Are they going to have exactly, or they're just selling everything now?
Well, I can tell you one distillery that's going to have aged whiskey. That's Arbiki, because they're going to put their first single malt out when it's 18. They're not going to put any malt out before it's 18.
They're doing some pretty cool stuff with rye, though.
What are they doing in the meantime? How do they make money?
Rye, vodka, gin. Amazingly expensive rye, 3-year-old rye for 200 pounds. Some people buy it, though.
Where's the Kickstarter?
Yeah. Hey, I haven't tasted it yet, and I don't know if it's in Israel, but there's another distillery, one of the other new distilleries in Scotland is called Inchdairney. It's Lowland Fife Distillery. They've just released a rye whiskey, which, I mean, literally, it was like about a month ago they released it. It's had some great reviews, but I haven't tried it yet. So a lot of the journalists all said lovely things about it, so I haven't seen it yet. But that's another new distillery that's maybe using rye while they're getting their malt up to age. So we divided opinion with this one then. David, you don't like us anymore because we made you drink an inch fad.
One thing you should know about Hebrew, Paul, that you don't have in Hebrew, you don't have a pit smoke and like fireworks smoke. So if you say peat, if you say smoky, then it's the same word for pit smoke and for fire smoke. It's the same word. You have to add another word for it.
So
burning
house smoke.
You
can
wood,
say
Asaf,
you can say Kabuli and Rushan. It's a different.
Yeah, but for the layman, it's the same thing. You say someone from the street Kabul, you don't know what you mean, what you talk about. Yeah, maybe no. But if you say Lag BaOmer, yeah.
This is much more Kabuli than smoky.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So it's peaty, it's Kabuli, yes.
And I didn't like it in the first taste, and now I'm very fond of it.
Because it's a very complex whiskey that changes in your glass. You should get a bottle, and then you'll get the entire picture with this whiskey. It's something
I will buy a bottle of this whiskey because I will have the 1 hour and an hour and a half time to drink one glass. It's excellent.
Is there any battles of this whiskey?
I'll talk to Igal tomorrow, and I'll let you know what's left.
Yeah,
but it's good that you guys, I learned things from here as well. So the different terms for the word smoke is interesting, because when you live in Scotland and you go to places like Italy to whiskey shows, you're trying to explain to somebody what peat is. Because they don't have peat on their fire.
Yeah.
So they're like, what, you dig it out of the ground and you burn it? Yes, that's it's what they do. It sounds like it shouldn't work, but they're trying to bring a law in Scotland at the moment to stop people to try and save the as much of that as possible.
Stop harvesting peat.
Yeah, I mean, the whiskey industry obviously uses a bit of it, but not as much as you'd think. But I think they're trying to protect it because obviously the peat bogs are places for wildlife as well. So we got to find a balance somewhere, I think. So
yeah, it's interesting what you think about it, because it's so crucial to the character of the whiskey for when the peats come, so it can completely change the profile of the distillery. If they take peat from 100%. A nicer place, yeah.
But again, where you take your peat from also has a difference, because if you take your peat from the islands, the peat is compressed seaweed and marine matter, so you get that medicine, the iodine. If you take your peat from the highlands, it's compressed plant matter, and you don't get the seaweed or excuse me. You don't get your peat. See, when I talk about smoke, I start to sneeze. But you don't get it's a different effect on the whiskey, whether it's Highland or Island peat, which is a really bad way of bringing us into dram number 9, which is bottle number 9, because this is a Highland peated whiskey that's been matured in an Islay whiskey cask. Bottle number 9.
When you say Islay, are you allowed to say which Islay?
No, but it's an anagram of badger. Bleep that on the video before they. So get your pens out and start playing with the letters. Yeah, this is Ardmore Highland whiskey. Ardmore is well known for doing peated Highland. So it's a 9-year-old. Not a lot of Ardmore is not bottled at much age. Bottled at 58.5, but it's been in an ex-Isla cask, so probably an American bourbon cask that's had an Isla peated malt. So this is an interesting one. If you like your complexity, this one, you should try and pick out the different styles of peatiness. I mean, obviously, the cask will have less influence on the liquid than, what it was distilled from.
This
Probably.
one comes back at you.
Yeah.
Like
kicks you in the teeth.
Doesn't hit you straight like an Isla whiskey, but then you can pick out the little Isla. There is a little bit of medicine, a little bit of iodine in there.
And also some really harsh sweet notes.
But Ardmore is one of those. I hadn't really done much with Ardmore before I joined this company. We've bottled a few casks. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's my clear winner.
We saved it till the end just for you.
Well, also, Mike, after you've had 8, your judgment is a little bit impaired.
You might be right. You might be right. I might be a little bit right.
You never know. It might be enhanced.
The smell is excellent. I like it. And I didn't taste it yet, but the smell is excellent.
It's not a simple whiskey, this one, because the various components are all known for having serious heft, serious power.
The moment you said it's not a simple whiskey, everybody going to say that they like it the most, because they all want to be the experience.
I don't think it's the most complex of the night. I don't think it's the most complex of the night. I think maybe the Inchfad takes that one.
It's like grassy and smoky at the same time.
This is one of the youngest of the evening, but definitely it's heavily peated. Although the phenolic level, I think Ardmore, their ppms are usually about 18. 18. It's not crazy. It's not like Octomore or anything like that. So
Paul 18, you say?
No, their ppm level is, I think the last time I read about it, it said the ppms are usually like 15 to 20 or something like that. So
it smells like 45.
Yeah.
It's also quite lactic.
15.
It depends where you measure it depends where you measure the peating at. I think Ardmore, they measure it in the barley, get their barley peated to that level.
35.
Yeah. I mean, if you send the bottle away for analysis and they test the liquid, it's maybe higher. So
everyone measures it at barley, but you're absolutely right. The cut is different, but still, this one is much peatier than any other Ardmore I ever tasted.
And it's funny
I have to agree with him.
If you go out and you find heavily peated whiskeys that advertise themselves as heavily peated from distilleries, and they say they've got 40 or 50 or 60 ppm, I think you put it side by side with this, it's harder to it's hard to see that leap,
This has a depth and a complexity, and it changes. I really like it.
It smells like Ardmore, but it tastes like Ardbeg. Oh, am I allowed to say that?
That's nice.
Yes. So Ardbeg.
This is right.
Crazy.
Yes.
And David,
the
this one is
fish.
going all over the place again, and you like it. You see, and previous
תגיד
one.
לי, מאיפה הטעם של האגוזים?
Chestnuts, nuts flavor.
Something very different.
Nutty. You get a little bit nuts here.
I love it. Well,
but this one also is very complex, and you get a lot of them going all over the place. You get eye lime smoke, and you get space side smoke, and you get sweetness, which is very balanced, and you get a lot of very nice notes going into the drum and changes through time.
Well, this one is very complex.
Yeah, the sweetness, the sourness.
Yeah, I still like the Ingvad yet more.
I don't know if I like it.
Definitely the Ingvad.
Yes.
While we've all still got a glass in our hand, I need a quick photograph so that I can see everybody here.
I want this with sherry.
You can raise your glass.
Give
us a smile.
Wait 1 second. Wait 1 second.
There we go. Oh, hang on. I've got it set on. Right, I need it on photo. There we go. Right, everybody, say cheese.
South Coast Whiskey.
South Coast Whiskey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's all right. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the 9. But again, I'm going to say which one is your favorite. Let's have a bit of a fight.
I think the Ingvad as well.
The 2 white wines.
But I'm going to go back to somebody said it earlier on. There's your favorite, and there's the one you find is the most interesting. Sometimes your favorite is not necessarily the most interesting. But
I really like the 2 white wines.
Yeah, I'm with you, Menashe. I'm with you.
All of them are very nice. All of them, it's a bottle that I would buy. All of them, I can enjoy them. All of them, it's perfect, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Thank you.
well, you can say that to me, but I can say that to you guys as well, because if you guys didn't buy it and you didn't support places like Egal's store, we couldn't do this. So yeah, we can keep doing what we're doing as long as you guys do what you do, because they work hand in hand. That's how it should be. So
yeah, coexist. Yeah.
I will buy any one of these bottles.
Yeah, I have to say what impressed me the most was not any single bottle, but the overall standard of all the bottles that are fairly young.
Yeah.
They're not old. Okay, there are a lot of bottles from these distilleries in the independent market these days, and the overall quality is, for me, much higher than most bottlers that I've tasted recently.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with you.
Totally agree. You couldn't go wrong with any one of these bottles. It was all amazing in all sorts of different ways.
Thank you. This is great to hear. You're going to make my head so big I can't leave the room. But this is great to hear, because we take a lot. It would be easy just to take a cask and put it in a bottle and put a label on it, but we do try and find ones that we might not necessarily think they're ones that we would buy, but we try and find. We want a range that's interesting. We want a range that covers different styles. The fact that not everybody here liked the same dram tonight, and everybody's got a different favorite, or everybody's got reasons they like and don't like other ones. That's what we want to see. That variation is good. It shows that we're not, if everybody liked the McDuff PX, I'd be worried. If that was everybody's favorite dram, because it means that there's 8 that weren't your favorite, and I'd rather see a good debate or argument about who's got the best one than everybody trying to buy one bottle.
I think that we are the winners here, not the bottles.
No, it's great. And you have the great weather, and you have the good stores, and
no great weather. No good. It's too hot here.
Hold on. Are you comparing our stores in Israel to the Scotch stores in Scotland and saying we have the great stores?
No, you have some great stores. I live in Glasgow.
Much better than they used to be.
I live in Glasgow, right? 600,000 people in this city, and there are 2 or 3 good whiskey stores.
Really?
Now, if you go further north, if you go to Inverness, you'll find more. But for a city this big, that's got a big Scottish population and a huge amount of tourists, it's we.
Yeah, but Master of Malt and the Whiskey Exchange delivered to you without outrageous 150% taxation.
Yeah.
So
no,
it doesn't matter that the store isn't in your city. No offense.
It is, and I love Master of Malt and Whiskey Exchange because you can get precisely what you're after, and you can get it quickly. But I do love, if you're traveling anywhere, and I think every whiskey person is the same. If you pass a store and you see bottles in there, you go in and you start pulling them off the shelf.
Yeah.
And you can't do that on a website.
Yeah, that happened to me. That happened to me in many stores around the world. In some stores that are between countries all over the world. That are stores in Europe, in places that were duty-free in the past, and now they are just stores on a border. And I passed through and I found something that was there for 5 or 10 years waiting for someone to pick it up.
Yeah. We've got
wonderful.
There's a bottle in our office now, and it's hilarious because in February, Alex and I and a few of the people from the company, we were working at one of these business trade expos in Japan. So it wasn't a whiskey show, it was one where you meet importers from different countries. But Tokyo's got a lot of really cool, tiny little whiskey bars. And in one of these whiskey bars, Alex found a bottle he hadn't seen. It was a 28-year-old Glenord.
Wow.
We'd never seen it anywhere. Maybe it was an Asian-only release or something. It was an old bottle. It was an old bottle.
It's a distillery bottle. It's for the counter.
And it was in the bar. It was open, and he loved this. And he went online trying to find it, and we couldn't find it in the UK. We couldn't find it. We found it in one shop in Switzerland. And of course, it's difficult now. Thanks to Brexit, it's really difficult to move stuff from Europe into the UK. Switzerland is not technically in Europe, but Alex lives in Germany and couldn't order it in Switzerland for delivery to Germany. So about 2 months later, I was working at a whiskey festival in Switzerland, and the shop where this bottle was, we phoned the shop, and the guy from the shop brought the bottle on the train to the whiskey fair in the next city, and we exchanged it, and I brought it home to Glasgow in my luggage. And we keep telling Alex we're going to open it and drink it when he's not looking, because he hasn't taken it back to Germany yet. But this is what you do when you find one of these. I mean, it wasn't crazy expensive, but he just couldn't find it anywhere. It was like literally one shop we found it. And again, you wouldn't have found that by sitting on a website. If you looked at the description of the website, it's not something you would buy because you can't try it. But there it was on the bar in a cool little whiskey bar, thousands of miles away. None of us had ever seen it before.
Cool.
That's why having great little stores and good places to go and drink whiskey are exciting. So,
what's that behind you? These are labels. What you have on the
wall behind me here.
The frames on the our left. These are labels from your expressions.
These ones?
Other side.
Other side here.
Yeah. Yes.
No, those are backstage passes for concerts.
Wow.
So
Which ones?
I used to work for a company that did a lot of sponsorship of rock bands. So they're if we went closer, there's like passes for Slayer and Slipknot and all sorts of shit up there. So.
As you see, I'm interested. Yeah.
Do you want to look?
Yeah, sure.
Give me a second.
Yeah, yes.
Right. So if I go over here,
One of us.
so where we go? There's Mastodon's first ever magazine cover, signed pass from their first tour.
Wow.
Wow.
Awesome.
Where have we got? Who's here? Who's here? My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
Who else we got? There's a few. You'll recognize some of them.
Download? Yeah,
Machine Head.
Yeah.
Johnny Trent.
The
Yeah,
Vivian.
there's a few. So
wow, man,
back in the old days.
you're
That's why
living
I'm
the good
deaf.
life, man.
That's why I'm deaf.
I am feeling more and more sorry for you. I feel like I need to, I don't know,
be deaf.
empathize more with the suffering that you're taking.
This is why I can barely hear anything anymore in my old
But
age.
it's making your other senses, your palate, so much more.
That wall there is old whiskey labels, but not my
It's
whiskey
compensate.
labels. But
It's like reverse Daredevil. You can't hear, but you smell better.
What kind of whiskey label over there?
those are like there was I found a little store. There was a sort of flea market in Glasgow, and they were selling prints of the old vintage whiskey labels.
Nice.
They're not original. They're like made on somebody's printer yesterday. But I thought they were really cool. So there's like the old black and white labels and the old Dunvilles and stuff like that.
These would make great labels for whiskey.
Well, they were labels for whiskey like 30 years ago. So, but they make little posters for my my study. So,
thank you very much, guys.
Thanks a
You
lot.
can say thank you for Paul Dempsey. Very.
no.
Paul,
Thank
thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving up your Thursday
Thank
night.
you very much.
Hope to
thank
see
you
you
very
in
much.
Israel next time.
Have a good evening, Paul.
And please,
Much
we'll be in touch on
appreciated.
email. Let us know when you'll be the next time in Israel, so we can get guys.
Yeah,
Maybe you can
well,
give
yeah,
us a frontal meeting, and we'll get a tasting event with you.
Yeah,
We
well,
would
the whole thing
love to host you at the local distilleries.
the whole thing that we said to Ego, we came out to Israel because there was supposed to be a thing at the embassy. So we were only there for 3 days.
Yeah.
But the next time, I think we need to come for like a week, and we'll do a couple of different things. I want to see much more of what I saw. So
I hope you like what you saw right now from what we have in Israel. It's not a lot, but you have a lot of guys that know whiskey and love whiskey.
yeah,
We have a lot of passion for this.
and one of the guys from Milk and Honey lives 3 miles away from here.
Who is this? Tomer?
Shilton.
Shilton Alameda. He's the brand ambassador.
Yeah, he lives 3 miles away from here. I see him like every single week in pubs in Glasgow.
Send him the regards from South Coast Whiskey Society.
I will do.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome. Guys, thank you
Thanks
ever
again,
so much.
guys. Thank you.
Great to see you. And yeah, if anybody's got any questions, find me an email. I've got my details, so let me know if you've ever got any whiskey questions. Get in touch, and I hopefully see you soon for a proper dram in person, huh?
Yeah, Paul.
Yes.
And thanks, Asaf and Alex, for organizing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Asaf.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thanks,
Amazing.
guys. It was
Great
great night. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See you all. I'm ending this transmission.
Thank you. And
Cheers.
good night.
Thank you, Paul. Bye.
everybody.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.